Okay. I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, who is the Lapeer County Veterans Affairs Director. It's Mr. Ed Ronder. We've had him here a few other times. He's always full of information. Ask him your questions, and he'll give you the right answers, and he's very inspiring. Please welcome, if you would, Ed Ronder. He's got a lot to tell you tonight, too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. If you folks don't mind, I'm still getting over a bout of the gout, and so I'm going to grab a chair and I'll be seated while I give my little address, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me. How's everybody doing tonight? I even brought a little cheat sheet. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ed Ronders. I'm Director of Lapeer County Veterans Affairs. I assumed that position in 2015, April 20th. I've been there ever since. And I come to you tonight from that job, and as I was telling Tim, I'm in a gratified, grumpy mood. I'm gratified about the people I work with, and I'm very gratified about the veterans we all work for. A real quick story. Yesterday, I had the honor of meeting with a 103-year-old World War II vet. He was a cook in England, and he was assigned, I don't remember the name of the base, but he was assigned to cook for a bomber squadron in England. They were going over to Germany. And he now spends his days, bless his heart, sitting in his garage, watching the world go by and just relaxing. And I went over there yesterday to see if there was anything he needed, such as hearing aids, maybe some health care, because another veteran had tipped me off that this fellow might need some help. So we went over there. And this 103-year-old vet looks at me and he says, "Well, what can I do for you?" And I thought, no, you've already done more than enough. Just a truly amazing gentleman. So that's the gratifying part. And I'll get to the grumpy part later. Let me get my cheat sheet here. I want to give you a little history about our Veterans Affairs Office. This is a very special year for our department. It was established in 1969, 50 years ago this year. It was August, I think it was 29th, 1969, when the County Board of Commissioners voted to establish the department. For years, it had a director, and that was it, and a secretary. And it was funded from the county's general fund. And I'm not trying to rag on anybody, disparage anybody, but looking back a little bit from 10,000 feet, it seems like it was somewhat of an afterthought. You got what money that the county saw fit to give you. So it was limited. As time went on, the veteran population grew till it reached a peak about 2 years ago when we had 6,600 veterans in Lapeer County. Out of that, according to the VA's data, 64% or so, 63 or 64% were Vietnam vets, which means you have an aging veteran population, and that carries a lot of various factors related to it. Fast forward to 2012, and thanks to, shall we say, almost a crusade by at least one Vietnam vet that I was aware of. I wasn't in Lapeer County at the time. He called upon a law that other counties had followed that allowed the county to establish or ask the voters to approve up to 1/10 of 1 mil to fund the operation of the department. In that election in 2012, there's 37 precincts in Lapeer County. It passed in 34. And we know the 3 precincts that didn't pass it, and boy, we're going to give them hell. And then fast forward to 2016 when I was director. It expired in 2018, but I thought, I'm going to take a chapter out of some other people's books, and I'm going to go for it in 2016, a less crowded ballot and so on. And we sort of had a laid-back campaign. We did get out and deliver the gospel according to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And election night, which was a pretty good night from what I understand, by the time I got home, Donald J. Trump was president. That was kind of cool. Got home in time to see CNN with the look of shock on their face. I couldn't believe that. These guys, I'm getting sidetracked here, but I thought, you know what? I'm watching history. And is this ever cool? Anyways, back to the Veterans Affairs Department. That night, we set a record that'll never be matched. Hillary sure as hell wishes that she could have done the same. Out of 37 precincts, we carried 37. And you ain't going to beat that unless you're padding the ballot box, maybe, huh? Anyways, we have a staff of 4 people. I have 2 other fellow service officers, accredited service officers, who handle claims, along with myself. We have an administrative assistant. And then we have, we're very fortunate, we have veteran service organizations, the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the Vietnam Vets of America. They want to get more involved in helping veterans file claims and access their benefits. And so we have a VVA, or Vietnam Vet counselor, come in on Mondays. And on Thursday and Friday, we have 2 different Veterans of Foreign Wars folks come in. And they help us out. And that's a big help. The veterans are blessed by having them, because a lot of their service officers work down in Detroit at the VA's regional office. And they have, I'm not down at the regional office, and they have a little more connections than I do. And we spend a lot of time brainstorming on difficult cases. So our staff, Cheryl has been there, Cheryl Burrow. I'm sure you folks probably know her. My challenge is to find someone she doesn't know in this county. She's been there over 20 years. And Denise Owen, she came on following the 2012 election and approval of the millage. She was a former social worker. And Cheryl started out as a secretary down there, so she knows ins and outs and in-betweens of our office. And if I could use one word to describe them, it's compassion. They have compassion for veterans. Cheryl had an appointment with a veteran yesterday, come in about, for whatever reason, for a claim. And the dude brings in 2 big pizzas and a big old salad. And he says, here, lunch is on me. We don't accept gifts, but somebody buys you lunch, you can accept it. You don't have to refuse it. It was just a sign of generosity and gratitude. Our mission is very simple. We try to connect veterans with the benefits that they have earned the moment they raised their right hand and took the oath and put on that uniform. And there's a whole host of benefits out there, and there's a lot of veterans who don't know the benefits, or they don't realize what benefits are available. There's disability compensation, pension, I don't want to miss anything, VA health care, education. There's emergency grants for veterans who fall into a financial issue. We have 2 funds to cover that, a state-funded fund and a county-funded program. Time to turn the page. To give you an idea of the work we're doing, I'm going to throw some numbers at you. In 2018, we had 888 appointments, veterans who scheduled an appointment to come in and talk about could be health care, it could be burial benefits. That's one I forgot to mention before. We had another 737 who walked in unannounced. They might have a question. Like, I got a letter from the VA, what does this mean? We fielded 4,608 telephone calls, which that's a pretty good number, and that was up 25% rough and dirty from 2017. Our transportation program, which I'm really proud of, in fact, today was a darn good day, a gratifying day. We took delivery of our second vehicle in our fleet, and we used the fleet and volunteer drivers to take veterans to VA medical appointments. The only thing we give the volunteer drivers is once a year I have a pizza party. Darned if it doesn't work. And last year they made 254 trips to appointments, which is up 10% from 2017's 231. Transported 287 veterans to VA medical appointments, typically in Saginaw, Ann Arbor, Detroit, Yale, and Flint. There were some that we took to the private sector, as I call it, to community care, but not very many. We've gone on Sundays, we've gone on Saturdays, and we also take spouses. And one part of the gratifying thing, please don't take this wrong, but we had a vet we took down to Ann Arbor for a checkup. We never asked what's going on, just asked him to give us a rough and dirty time frame. How long should we hang around and suck coffee? And he went down there. He had trouble with his legs, and they kept him. We brought his wife back home. She gets a call. You better come down here. And to this day, I don't know what happened. It's none of my business. But they ended up amputating his right knee from the knee down. And so we were able to take the wife back and forth, and we're still taking him. I mean, he's a grumpy old Marine, but by God, he's marching on too. And last year, our transportation program traveled 31,347 miles, and that was up from 24,393 the year before. So in adding this other vehicle, now we have complete control over our fleet, whereas before we had a vehicle on loan from the Disabled American Veterans, which we were competing against ourselves, and that's why we're going to send that one back and let it be used somewhere else in the state. Our budget last year, we had revenue of $309,175 to operate our office. The bulk of that goes towards salaries, benefits, and insurance, and all that good stuff, and running the office. However, on top of that, in fact, right here in Mayfield Township at the airport, we had our 4th annual Veterans Summit. And this community is so generous. This is part of the gratifying stuff. I'll get to the grumpy stuff later, trust me. But we raised over $20,000 to have that event. Got a grant from the Community Foundation, one from the state of Michigan, KMAX, among others, and I better be quiet because I'll probably overlook somebody, and I don't want to ignore anyone. And all this effort, helping the veterans, the folks who come through, and we go out, we knock on doors because we want to make people aware of what they're entitled to. The VA puts out an annual report. It's called the GDX report every late May, early June. And when I got here, it was 2015, so it's always a year behind. 2014, the VA paid out 29 point some million, I think 29.4 million in benefits to Lapeer County veterans. That gradually rose to 34 million in 2017. So that was about a 15% increase over a couple of years. And ironically, last year it dipped down to 33 million and change. So that the effort in what the veterans are doing, that brings actual money in the community. Like my old chairman of our board told me, he said, you know, people pay their house payments with that, with their disability compensation and their pensions. They buy groceries. They buy gas. And it's pretty good money. When you figure we've got 5,961 veterans in the county. You might ask, why do you think it dipped from 17 to 18? In 2017, the end of the year, we had 6,600 veterans in the county. This year, we're down to the 5,900, and I think it's 31 or 51, so we lost 10% of our veteran population. Remember I told you we have an older demographic with Vietnam vets, and I'm sure some of those folks, they passed on, and other folks moved out of the county. But statewide, we're down below 600,000 vets. I've always used a sort of a round ball figure that Lapeer County makes up rough and dirty 10% of the state veteran population. Michigan used to be 10th or 11th in the country in veteran population. Ohio was up there in the top 10, and so was Illinois. And I haven't checked lately to see where we rank, but veterans are getting older, and we've got to do a better job of reaching out to what I call the younger vets, the post 9/11 guys and gals. And now, can I get in the grumpy part, Tim? Because I come here and I want to ask for your help, because there's some issues that are going on in Washington and in Lansing and locally that I need your help with. Number one, let's start in Washington. Anybody in here have Congressman Paul Mitchell's address? You have him on speed dial? Debbie Stabenow? I need you to get hold of him. I don't know how many of you noticed in the news over the last maybe month, there was quite a bit of news on this. VA health care is quite a big item, as evidenced by how many vets we take back and forth to medical centers. If you go back to 2014, you may remember this. Remember when I think there was 40 veterans who died in the Phoenix VA Medical Center? And Congress raised holy hell. I remember I was retired the first time during that little uprising, so I got to sit home and watch some of the congressional hearings. And one congressman, he was grilling some VA official, why don't you have this taken care of? And if you tell us what you need, and money is no object. And I thought, oh man, I'd like to have that toolbox. So Congress, in its infinite wisdom, tried to address the problem, and I'm sure their intent was good. The execution, not so much. They enacted the Choice Act. Anybody in here familiar with the Choice Act? It was, I like to put it in this perspective, in the not the Persian Gulf, but in the Iraqi war, we had a lot of soldiers coming back with traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, from IEDs. There I go with the acronyms. Shame on me. And met a gentleman who was overseeing the TBI's Association, I guess, of Michigan. He was an advocate for vets who suffered from traumatic brain injuries. And he had a really good point. He said, we got some darn good neurological centers in this country. I'm thinking Henry Ford is up there. U of M is up there. Why can't those folks who put their lives in danger to defend us, why can't they access that for treatment? I thought, you're right. Nothing against the VA healthcare system, but it was falling short. And you have other assets. Why not use them? Well, that's what Congress tried to do. They passed the Choice Act. And the Choice Act allowed a veteran, and it had standards, and I hope I get this right, if you had to wait more than 30 days to get care, or you had to travel more than 40 miles to the nearest VA medical center, you were able to go to what they call community care. You could go to a neurologist. The VA would come up with a list, and the VA would pick up the tab. And you were also, as a veteran, if you were a disabled veteran and you had a medical emergency, you could go to your local neighborhood hospital, identify yourself as a veteran, And the hospital contacted the VA within 72 hours, and it was a life-threatening condition, a couple of qualifications on it, then the VA would pick up the tab. Well, a couple things happened. Number one, the 30-day, 40-mile rule, they didn't take into account that some people live, for example, in northwest Michigan, or they might live on an island up there. I forget the name of it. It's not Drummond. And they're quite a ways from the doggone nearest VA facility, let's say Traverse City. But they didn't chart that in their calculations. Number two, the folks who were going to the ER, that was a boondoggle, and the vet's getting billed not only for ER visits, but also visits to, I went into a foot doctor, and they asked where I worked, and I told them, and they jumped on me. Why the hell doesn't the VA pay us in a timely manner? I don't know. I don't write the checks. But that was a big problem. So if you want to discourage people from participating in your program, don't pay them in a timely manner. And that's what was happening. So you can fast forward to 2018. A guy by the name of Trump spearheaded a movement to fix the Choice Act. And oh, by the way, did I mention that Congress gave the VA 90 days to put that program into place and execute it? Can you imagine that with all the VA medical facilities around the country? No wonder it was screwed up. And they had a third-party administrator who was to, shall we say, enlist the community providers and keep that list and make it accessible to the veterans. I think that administrator is now the former administrator. They did a lousy job. Anyways, President Trump spearheaded the movement to enact what's called the Mission Act. Please don't ask me what the Mission Act stands for, because that's an acronym, believe it or not. It's a long, long title. But it's the Choice Act, both on a diet and on steroids. The standards have changed. If you need to see your primary care physician and you have to wait longer than 20 days, or you live more than 30 minutes from a VA health facility, then you are eligible to go into community care. Cool. If it's specialty care, let's say you're going to need your hip replaced, or pick a subject, orthopedics, cardiac, whatever, and the standard is you have to wait more than 28 days to get it addressed, or live 60 minutes from a VA health facility, you're eligible to go into community care. And most of the veterans in Lapeer County, the closest VA facility, it's an outpatient clinic, is the closest, I'm thinking. That's the one in Flint, and that's, I think, 37 miles. It's over on Linden Road, and then the other one is in Yale. But Yale is connected to the Detroit VA Medical Center, which is a lot farther than 30 miles. And Flint, you would be connected to the Saginaw VA Medical Center, which is also farther away. So we got a boatload of veterans in this county that are eligible for community care. This act went into effect June 6th. And some people are screaming that this is President Trump's way of privatizing VA health care. Well, I go back to that guy that was involved in TBI, because his son had a TBI. And he's right. Why in the hell can't you use the experts in the community if you need to? And that's the whole purpose behind it. And the VA can't force doctors to sign up. They can suggest, they can help, they can accommodate them. Like my foot doctor, I'm anxious. I go back Friday, I'm going to ask them if they're signing up again. It also changed the third-party administrator, and they're collecting a database of the various providers. We had a workshop on this June 10th, a week ago yesterday. We had over 60 people show up, which was really good for one of our lunch and learn workshops. So there's a heck of a lot of interest. We hit a home run on that. And one of the things that came out, remember I mentioned the urgent care? Well, I always believe that you can have the best program in the world, but if nobody knows about it, what good is it? So how are we going to let the vets know where to go when you break a finger like I did at slamming a garage door, or gash your hand in a closet door? Or maybe I should stay away from doors, huh? You need to know. If you're not a service-connected veteran, I think the first 3 visits are free. After that, I think there's a $30 copay. And they're collecting names. They're getting enrollees from across the state. As of June 10th, the day of our workshop, they had 4 urgent care centers across the state that had signed up. It's okay. It's early. I'll give them some time. 3 of them were in Flint. Well, that don't help me when my hand is bleeding like a nobody's business, and I'm going to go get this sucker stitched up. What am I going to do? Go online and look it up? So they've got some work to do. And they promised, absolutely promised, they're going to take care of the timely payment issue. It got so bad, under the Choice Act, I have a buddy of mine, he used to work for me. He's a service-disabled vet. He's got back problems. And I think he was going down to Ann Arbor. But they had sent him to a private care physician to help him with his back. He started getting bills. I said, no, the VA pays this. And the doctor says, no, you pay it. And back and forth they went, and he was not alone, I assure you. It goes to collection. And what the hell does that do to your credit rating? Thanks, VA, but no thanks. So they promised that that's not going to happen. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's see. So what else was I going to mention about this? Okay, here we got the specialty thing for 60 miles. But there's one little fatal flaw in the Mission Act right now. It is subject to change. Because we at the county know, and those people in Washington who are still there are not out campaigning, for God's sakes, for president. They should know that it's budget season. And they're going to, I think, well, doesn't the law require them to have the budget in place by September 30th for the October 1st New Year? Yeah, I thought so. But they might get around to it in December. And that's going to be kind of a grumpy thing with the Mission Act because it's not funded. They've got to put that into the VA's budget for the coming year. So I ask you folks, the next time you chit-chat with Congressman Mitchell, Debbie Stabenow's office, or Gary Peters' office, please ask them, where do they stand on that? Are you going to make sure that it's funded? That these bills are paid in a timely manner so vets, because they got injured, they may have a service-connected injury or disability, that they're taken care of? Because to me it's just unconscionable that they wouldn't fund this for the money that they need. And I rely on you folks to help us out on that. I'm just one voice. But believe me, and I have found this out over the years, I haven't been afraid to rattle cages. And Michigan's congressional delegation, they will listen. They don't always act, but they'll listen real good. Next. The other one that makes me grumpy is sort of it's kind of a secret. Because, my gosh, the law's now 13, 14 years old. And I testified in support of this in 2005. It was the Senate. Senior Citizens and something other and Veterans Affairs Committee. And in a previous life, I worked with veteran entrepreneurs to help them start businesses and to grow businesses. And on the growing side, we looked at other states, gave veterans preference, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses preference on state contracts. On the federal end, there's a law, 10650, passed in 1999, that also gave veterans preference on federal contracts. And the feds have a 3% goal. All the agencies within the government and any prime contractor, hello Ford, hello GM, hello Chrysler, they meet a certain threshold, and trust me, those big boys do. They're to set aside 3%. But let's focus on the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan had no preference. So a bunch of us vets, we kind of got cheesed off, and we stormed the Capitol one day and visited a whole bunch of folks, including, at the time, Senator Pat Colbeck, who turned out to be a big supporter of this movement. And in 2005, we got Public Act 91 was passed. I got to cheat again. And it did a couple things for veterans. One, businesses owned by qualified service-disabled veterans would get up to a 10% pricing preference. So if Tim here, he bid $10,100 on a contract, and I'm an SDVOB and I come in at $10,000, and everything else being equal, I win. And that's only fair. Because remember, in 2005, all you know what was breaking loose in the Middle East. And we had just a ton of veterans coming home. And so Michigan passed that law. Part of that law also required that they had to award 3% of all contracts to service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. And every year, by December, file a report to the governor on how each department is doing and how the state is doing. Did you meet your 3% goal? And if not, why not? Good question. I think that's called accountability. Only one problem. Check back, and I used to love doing this. I file an FOI, usually in March, give them enough time to get it together. Hey, can I get a copy of that report to the governor? I want to see how the departments are doing. Can you give me the figures? I think it took about 6 years to get up to 2% of the entire amount of contracts awarded by state agencies. But in the meantime, we challenged the state of Michigan, why don't you be a leader? Forget the 3%. Let's go to 5%, damn it. And they bought it. So we went to 5%. So that 2.2%, which was the highest that I've seen, was they thought they were being successful. But were you really? And I look back at Michigan, Governor Snyder established the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency in 2013. I wonder what percentage of the contracts they award for goods and services are owned by service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. I quit harassing the Department of Management and Budget when I retired from that entrepreneurial job. So the next time you see a Gary Howell, you want to get him scratching his head, or Kevin Daly, or anybody else, ask them how they're doing with veteran-owned businesses being awarded contracts. The one that always bugged me was at the federal level. The VA, bless their hearts, to a degree, they are successful. The last I checked, they awarded 23% of their contracts to veteran-owned businesses. That's good. But you go to a VA business conference, we had one in Detroit in 2012, and they pass out those little swag bags where you can put all your brochures and stuff in. Damn, I wish they weren't made in China. I couldn't believe it. So when you meet the politicians, ask them that. Let's hold these people accountable. Because, veteran-owned businesses, They got this habit. They like to hire other veterans. And it's a world unto itself. And in our spare time, this was a funny one. We also jumped over to the private sector and chit-chatted with Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. Chrysler, I'm going to give you 2 cents for. They just completely ignored it. I told them it's not a suggestion, it's a law. Didn't matter. I'll give Ford all the credit in the world. It took them about a year, and they made a commitment that they were going to shoot for 3%. And one of the ways we did that, they buy the vehicles, the government buys the vehicles, and it's billions of dollars worth of vehicles from what's called the General Services Administration, the GSA. Found the guy that oversaw that program. I said, hey, Bill, can you help us out here? They're kind of ignoring their obligations under the law. It kind of brought Ford around. So there's things behind the scenes that governments, both state and federal and local, aren't doing. Mayfield Township, did they give veterans preferences? I believe Lapeer County does in hiring. You get extra points if you're a veteran. But I don't think they do it with contracts. And that's a situation I got to tackle. Maybe when I retire, I'll come back and haunt them. I don't know. But that's where you folks can really help. Now, ask your state reps and your state senators, why isn't this law being enforced? Why isn't it being adhered to? And why aren't these department heads being held accountable? That report that they're supposed to have every year, it's supposed to, if they're not meeting the goal, it's supposed to outline remedial steps that they will take to strive for that. So I think we need more teeth in that. I really do. Might as well turn this right side up, huh? And the last thing I need help on, I mentioned when I first sat down here, this is our 50th anniversary. And I left some flyers on the table. And we're going to, thanks to the state, they gave us a grant, Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. We're going to have an appreciation dinner for veterans on September 14th at the American Legion. We've got 300 seats, and it's open to veterans and a guest. That can be their spouse. I have one vet. He always brings his daughter. He's a widower. So that's the only requirement. Show up. And we'd love for you to spread the word. How many in here are veterans? I want to see you on September 14th. Roast beef, roasted potatoes, and we're going to have some good chow. How many in here know a veteran or have a veteran in their family? Please reach out to them. You're going to see a pretty good-sized advertising campaign on this. We'd love to have them. I got to tell you what we're going to do. I'm sure you're all familiar with the American Legion. And they have sort of like a horseshoe drive that goes around. You can drive up on either side off of Genesee. I didn't know this until the last couple of years when we were out here at the airport, that there is a bunch of groupies of classic military vehicles. Guys and gals love these things. And I've got an 83-year-old volunteer driver who really got into this, and he's lining up classic military vehicles. Last year, he found a guy who's local. He has, I forget the name of it. To me, it's like a touring car. It's a big convertible. It's a German. They've even got racks to put the guns in. And he had it out at the airport, and it was parked, I don't know, 100, 200 feet away. And I looked at it. I said, who is that sitting behind the driver's seat, behind the steering wheel? He had a mannequin dressed in a German soldier's uniform. I looked at it, I thought, holy cow. And it really looked lifelike. So we're going to take that, and we're going to take a 5-ton truck. We're going to beat a deuce and a half, double that. And we're going to park it out by the road. And I want to see how that German car attracts attention. You know, and I'm wondering, will some people take offense to that? I don't know. But not me. I'm not going to be around out there. But anyways, I need your help in helping to pass that word. if you would. I would really appreciate that. We want to thank a vet. And the last thing that I need help on, I mentioned this is funded by a grant. There's a big fight behind the scenes going on. There's the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency that had marching orders from Governor Snyder. We need to get more benefits coming into the state, because if somebody enrolls in VA health care, that potentially gets them off of Medicaid, saves us money, and down the line. And that's why he created the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. They only have 5 service officers for the entire state to handle 580,000 veterans. But they also award, the state legislature earmarks, I think it's $3.8 million a year to veteran service organizations, which would be the VFW, American Legion, Marine Corps League. No, Marine Corps League they went out of business about 6 months ago. That was a toughie. But Military Order of the Purple Heart, I know I'm missing some. And they have a limited number of service officers around the state. A lot of them are in Detroit, and they're at the VA medical centers. The third leg to that stool, county offices like myself. We have 113 accredited veteran service officers in the Michigan Association of County Veterans Counselors. And the theory is the state should support offices like ours, because there's more of us, and we're in the community every day, and we are where the rubber meets the road. And so there's been a philosophical disagreement. Well, last year, the chair of the House Veterans Affairs, Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, Jason Wentworth, who used to work for the MVAA, he started pushing through a bill that would allocate $2.1 million to offices like ours. You'd get an automatic $25,000 base grant, and then whatever was left over, because not all counties would participate, they would divvy that money up. We stood to be awarded $37,000 in change under that formula. They encouraged you to hire at least a part-time service officer so you could help, that person could help file more claims. The bad news was they had just a boatload of strings attached to that as far as reporting. I looked at that and I told my board, I said, no, I'm not going to be, why should I hire somebody and have them do nothing but fill out paperwork for the state? The state's going to take credit for it. Nuts to that. So the board did a very smart thing. They filed a letter of intent to buy time and said, yeah, we're going to think about filing for this. Lo and behold, a very special thing happened last December. It was called the lame duck session. That $2.1 million allocation for this program went up to $4.2 million. And they took away the strings, and they said local offices can use this to better serve the veterans in any way they see fit. I said, I'll buy that. My board backed me, so we applied for the grant, and we were awarded $71,135. And out of that, we're buying a new vehicle. We're putting some security measures in our office. I call it renovation for the state's sake. What else are we doing? And we're having this dinner, and we're having a pretty good-sized marketing campaign. Because believe me, again, if you have the best program, you've got to get the word out. Otherwise, what good is it? And you just got to keep hammering away, and we're going to continue doing that, upgrading our brochures, our flyers, and the whole bit. Well, that is subject to next year in appropriations. And when you talk to a Gary Howell, and you talk to a Kevin Daly, and you talk to any of those state lawmaker, put your support behind that, please. Because one of my philosophies is, somebody offers you a grant, you got to look at sustainability. If I hired somebody and paid them out of grant funds, and then next year the grant goes away, now what are we going to do? And if they stay a long time, Then you've got legacy costs, retirement, pension, health care, and so on. So it's important that the state continue that. And to be very honest, I was talking with Tim. Some of the things I've heard about the new governor, I'm giving her time, but they're not very encouraging when it comes to veterans. We went through, I'll be very blunt, we went through some very tough times with Governor Granholm. She cut funding to the veteran service organizations and left a lot of people scrambling. And that's one of the reasons why Governor Snyder reacted the way he did. So we need your support. We need your support on service-disabled veteran-owned businesses and on the Mission Act and getting support and getting funding for that. So with that, I'll sit down. I am sitting down. I'll just shut up and I'll take any questions you might have.
Oh, that's right. My first question is, one of the big things is I've heard that they have established a new, as we talked earlier, a new state representative for the Veterans Affair. And I'm not sure what this person's job is going to be, what you know about her, and what you think of that. Can you explain to everybody what she is and
Sure.
what you think?
And I do not remember her name. I don't. About a week ago Friday, there was a press release that came out of the governor's office, and I was able to get a copy. And the director of the MVAA, that position had been vacant, probably since December. It had been filled by, not Robert Redford, Mr. Redford, I can't remember the first name, get him mixed up with the actor. And he was an attorney. And when you switched administrations, of course, a lot of people leave. He opted to leave. And out the way out the door, he was appointed to the appellate court in the state of Michigan. So that remained vacant for quite a while until, like I say, a week or so ago, maybe June 7th. And this lady, she is a lawyer by trade. She was a member of the Army National Guard. And sometime in the 2000s, I wish I could remember the dates, her unit was activated and she was getting ready to deploy, according to this press release, and she fell off a truck and broke her back. And when you're injured while on active duty, you're eligible for a service-connected disability. And evidently, she went through that process, and it kind of got her attention that it's a paper chase. And so now she's working to help veterans. The law firm she works for, I'm not sure if it's on the west side of the state or in Detroit, but they help veterans apply for their various benefits. I kind of have a problem with that because I met a veteran shooting the breeze with him a few years ago. He's from Imlay City, and he got a service-connected disability, and he went to a lawyer to do the paperwork. I said, well, how'd that work out for you? He says, I got 100%. I said, good. What about the lawyer? And the veteran got back pay, is the simplest way to explain it. The lawyer took 30%. And we always say, you should never have to pay for the benefits that you earn, damn it. And what the lawyers are doing is absolutely legal, and it's the veteran's choice. But we have a policy, and so do my colleagues around the state. You engage a veteran, we can no longer help you. I'm not going to have two cooks in the kitchen. So to me, I see a potential conflict with her. We'll wait. Time will tell. Time will tell. 1-800-MISH-VET. And if you call me tomorrow, I'll get her name for you. That'll put you in touch with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. And just, I'll get her name and you can ask for her. Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I observed your presentation at the collaborative meeting about a week or so. The reason I attend those meetings is I'm have been suggested to go in there to oversee what's happening in Lapeer County. And I know the demographics that 43% of the population is age 57 years of age or older. And most of those, as you've already indicated, there's a large percentage of that are veterans. My question to you is, because of the demographics and because they're all senior citizens, most of them, is there a coordination between such departments as, for example, the Senior Coalition or the Senior Center where your office sits across from, you know, for activities, benefits, Meals on Wheels, and things of that nature?
Yes and no. Like anything else, it could be better. I think of the community mental health 3 years ago, 2 years ago. They got a grant to what do they call it? It's a senior outreach. The rule of thumb is, and I've sent people there, you have to be over 60, and if a person has an issue, we can suggest that they contact community mental health and say they want to get in the senior reach is what they call it, program. And what would happen, the community mental health will send out a social worker if the client approves, and they'll just sit down and have an evaluation. You know, where are you at? What do you think you need? Anything from respite care, maybe you've got a caregiver or your spouse is your caregiver, to Meals on Wheels, whatever. They're kind of a clearinghouse, and they look at all the various, what's the word I want, organizations and services that are available. That's one. And it's worked fairly well, but I'll be blunt. The support in the community for veterans is amazing. I've worked with people basically all over the country, and push the veterans aside, the civilian population, Lapeer County stands second to none when they come to supporting veterans. It's amazing. Both public and private, I think they could do better. Some of them mean well, but some of the biggest issues I've had, the toughest challenges, is when you get somebody who comes in and they say, well, here, let me show you how to do that. You know, slow down. Please don't tell my staff what to do. Don't be scheduling things for me. So it could be better. We looked very, very long and very hard at establishing a homeless shelter for vets in Lapeer County. And we looked at actually two avenues. One would be an emergency shelter where we could put you up for a couple of nights. Number two would be a transitional housing where you could stay for several months, and we would have wraparound services. It could be you might need employment help, you might need substance abuse counseling, mental health counseling, whatever the case may be. And we tried, and we got support from the community, got support from the county. I had a benefactor who says, hey, you find me a place and I'll buy it and I'll renovate it and we'll have our emergency shelter. And the county, they guided us. We ended up with the land bank looking at properties that might be being foreclosed on. Could we buy something like that? Don't ask me how we made it, but we got them. Next thing you know, we're looking at a property up in Carroll. And it didn't come together, long story short. But that's okay, because if you ain't feeling, you ain't trying. So, you know, the community could do better. That collaborative, I'll tell you one that just, I got to be careful of what I say, but McLaren Hospital, I brought the VA to the table so that we could integrate health care. They get a veteran in, especially on the behavioral health unit, and they may be dual diagnosed with substance abuse and mental health issues, and maybe they don't have insurance, so McLaren doesn't really want to bother with them. Where do they send them? Well, if they're a veteran, damn it, let's look at the VA medical centers. And we were going to develop a cheat sheet, I called it, or an org chart, so that the nurse on the floor at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night could know where to send that veteran. It would be at Saginaw or Detroit. Oh, they loved the idea. We brought a whole bunch of people together. We had one meeting. They loved the idea. I had to go all the way to the top of the McLaren Healthcare Corporation to even get this meeting. And that might have rankled some feathers here in Lapeer, but frankly, I don't give a damn. Then the next two meetings, they just let me know about an hour before, oh, we can't make it. Wrote a letter over here to McLaren, said to the head guy, said, look, we got a problem getting this together. I'd really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and see how we can fix this. That letter, I just found it the other day, a hard copy. I mailed it July 13th. I doubt if I'll have a voicemail from him in the morning or an email. And that's just, but they did take one of our suggestions. When you check in, they're going to ask you if you're a veteran. If you're a veteran, it goes on your chart. You know what they do? Then they put a little star on your door. John Smith, veteran. Every staff member who comes in then says, thanks for your service. To which I say, then what? You know, because that Mission Act I told you about putting people in community care, I invited them to our forum on the Mission Act. Didn't show up. I invited them out here to the airport. They didn't show up. But that community care works both ways, because a veteran is eligible for VA health care and all kinds of services. They might be homeless. I'll tell you another one. You got me going. We got a call. It was right before Christmas last year. And we called him the grumpy vet. And we did that affectionately. This guy, I can tell the story now because he's passed. He had stage 4 cancer. And he'd been going down to the Detroit VA. And we had been taking him down there. And he was a piece of work, let me tell you. Feisty guy. We get a call from him, I think it was on a Friday. He said, I'm in McLaren. They're going to discharge me here in about an hour. And he lived in Imlay City with his sister, and his sister was unable to come and get him. And he said, if I don't get a ride home, they're going to send me to a homeless shelter in Flint. I said, say what? I don't know about you, but those homeless shelters in Flint and Saginaw and in Detroit don't have good reputations. It's not your favorite place to be. So I said, let me see what I can do. So I immediately called the nurse on the floor and I said, let me get this straight. You're going to take Joe Vet in about a half hour and wheel him out that door by the ER and leave him on the curb and get him a bus to the homeless shelter. She said, that's right. I said, like hell you are. So the MTA is in the process of coming up with a program to transport vets. Genesee County had already started it. So I called MTA and I said, you know what? Let's see if your program works. I don't have anybody that I can send. It's a Friday afternoon. Can you help out this vet? And they said, let me see what we can do. They were able to pick him up and take him to Imlay City. If you know anything about public transit, God help you if you cross the boundaries. Well, they did. They should. But I thought, how could a medical facility turn their backs on veterans like that? That's just totally unacceptable. So, you know, hey, you run into somebody from McLaren, ask them why they treat vets like that. No, that. Sorry, I got off on a tangent, but that's something. That's one of the most. Bingo. Healthcare is the worst. They don't communicate. And I'll give you a flip side to that. They got the Carmanos Cancer Center up here. Okay. Let me go back to the other vet who went back to Imlay City. He came into the office 3 days later. I wasn't there. And normally he was grumpy. I don't blame him. I'd be grumpy too. But he wanted to just come in and say thank you. That made my Christmas. 8 weeks later, he was dead. But let me just go back here to Carmanos real quick. We had another veteran had been going to Carmanos for cancer treatments. Scratch that. He'd been going to Detroit for cancer treatments, and his doctors up here had also been going to Carmanos, and they wanted him. They thought the trip was too much. They wanted to treat him up here, and wanted to know if we could help convince the VA to let him come back into the public sector, the opposite of community care. We pulled some strings, got hold of the right people, thank God, and they approved it. The guy called me from the club chemo, as I call it, to thank me. He was getting a treatment. And it just was, he just felt so good about that. And he lasted, that was, I don't know, in the spring. His funeral was, be a year ago this 4th of July. So it can work. It's okay if they walk in the door and somebody's going to pay for it. The VA agreed to pay for those chemo treatments. But if you ain't got the bucks, get out of here. I'm sorry. Who had another question?
My wife and her sister were both nurses, RNs at McLaren Hospital in Flint. And that's a management decision to do that. The nurse doesn't do that on her own. So call out the right ones.
I agree. I've spent some time in McLaren, and I mean this in a loving way. I've had some Nazi nurses. They had a very strong way of, you will do this. But she was arguing with the wrong guy. No, we can avoid this. That poor guy was climbing a wall. Yes?
My name's Don Sell. I don't have a question, but I have a couple comments on two different issues.
Sure.
I go to the Detroit VA. In fact, I was there today. I'm on a CPAP machine, and when I started, the masks were very good. The Velcro on them was good. The masks today are terrible. And my doctor is using me to try some new masks from a different company, because all the masks in the United States are made by the same company. So at any rate, if people have problems with their masks, they need to tell the doctor about it. The second thing is, and it really grinds me, is the waste that I'm seeing, and it can be eliminated. What I'm talking about is twice a year they send me a package of masks and a new hose. 3 masks and a hose is $200. One's a medium, a small, and a large mask. I wear a medium. Do you know what happens to them other 2 masks? They get thrown out. So twice a year, there's $120 going to waste for each veteran. That's $240 a year. Just in the Detroit VA, there's like 4,500 vets on the CPAP machine. That's an enormous amount of waste. Now, I did find out that the doctors can order you your Pacific mask to eliminate that waste, but they don't want to do that. It's a little extra work, but if the veterans get together and demand that they do it, it will be done. We need to eliminate that waste. I don't even want to think how many vets in this entire country on CPAP machines. It'll be in the hundreds of millions of dollars that's being wasted. That doesn't have to be. And the only ones laughing are the companies that makes them masks. They're laughing all the way to the bank.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Let me preface my comments to your remarks. Please don't take me wrong. I have met some very wonderful people in VA healthcare and in private healthcare too. I had some folks at McLaren save my life about 7 years ago, and I'll be forever indebted. And I've had a good friend who had his life saved down at the Ann Arbor VA. That being said, yeah, we fought some fights with the VA. And they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that is so true. I'd give you a couple of options. Number one, keep communicating with your doctor. And if you're not getting satisfaction, you've got 2 options in my book. Yeah, 3 options. Go to your patient advocate. They're down there. You can get hold of us. I'll get you the name and get you a number. Number 2, it don't hurt to write the director a letter. I don't give a rip you go to the top. That's what they get paid for. Why not? Number 3, it don't hurt to pick up the phone, and I've got the number at work, and call Senator Stabenow's office and ask, what the hell's going on? Pretty simple, in Paul Mitchell's office. And I'll tell you who else I'd call. Somebody help me out here. John Dingle's wife, Debbie Dingle. Let her know. I mean, that place is named after her husband, a World War II vet. Let her know. I don't think she'd be very happy. So raise some hell, because do the math on what you just said.
Well, I'd like to say that the Detroit VA, my doctor's been working with me. We're trying to get a new supplier of masks to improve the Velcro situation. So I'd have to say they're working with me very good. And I just found out, it was just last week, that she can special order me my special mask, the medium-sized mask that I wear, and not send me the 3-pack and waste all that. But most of the doctors don't want to do that. I'm going to do whatever I can to get that to be made mandatory, because it'll save hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
It only makes sense.
Okay. The second thing I'd like to mention, last year I belonged to the Legion, and last year I went and bought 6 stick flags, and when I got home I saw they were made in China.
6 what?
6 stick flags that you put in the ground. And when I got home I saw they were made in China. I about flipped out. I couldn't believe it. So I went back, and I think everybody needs to do this. When you see that, I went back to the manager of the store and I gave her a piece of my mind. Because if enough people do that, they'll stop selling flags that are made in China. The second thing is, since I belong to the Legion, about 3 months ago, one of my magazines that I got, they had a couple pages on selling flags. And you'll save anywhere from 70, 80% possibly by buying them through the Legion. And they're better quality. And all the profits that they make from them go to help the veterans. So I'm saying, don't buy Chinese-made flags, the American-made flags that are made in China. We need to be buying American-made flags.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Any other questions or comments? It's good for the soul to let this stuff out, trust me.
I got one. Have you seen the new treatment they have for the war vets that's disabled, kind of their suicide, and they got a new injection. It takes 10 minutes to put it in their neck. And when the guy, after he got it, went back with the guy, and the first time he laughed, you never seen him smile. And it seems to take the problem away. It looks like they got the cure. They got in 100 GIs right now. And as soon as this through the test, then they're going to start treating them. And it seems to take the edge off, and hopefully that's going to stop all the suicides and that. So it looks good.
Now, I haven't seen that. That's
I've
that's
seen the
amazing.
whole program. I'm in 6 research programs in Mayo Clinic. I kind of stay up on all this stuff.
Mm.
But it's a good program. And they had a captain that was over there, and he lost a lot of people. And his wife finally told him that either he got treatment or that, and he's on that treatment. And all of them that's been on that treatment, they go for counseling after that, and they're all doing real good. All 100 of them is doing good. So it looks like they might have a...
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a nice setup.
I know. People think Lapeer County, it's rural, it's conservative. We don't have problems here. To which I say, you want to bet? Over the last 6 months, I've been working with 3, 4 veterans. 2 of them had attempted suicide. Another one was seriously thinking about it. And I can honestly say that each and every one went through hell. They went through hell. And I saw in the paper Sunday where they found a 30-some-year-old guy down in Metamora. Very sketchy. They found him, I think, they gave the names of the roads. I don't know if he was on the road or he was in a car or a house. I don't know. I'm just holding my breath. It isn't a vet that I was working with who lived down that way. I just don't know. They asked me on my job interview, boy, it was a curveball out of left field. What would you do if a vet committed suicide? And I wasn't expecting that, and I said, I would believe I failed. I'm working with a guy now, and So many of them, it's so tough to get them into treatment. But your greatest asset as a veteran is your fellow vet, because they'll open up to you. And I learned a long time ago, there's a reason. Gordie Howell taught me this one. There's a reason you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Do twice as much listening as you do talking. And so many guys and gals, they just want somebody to listen. Had a guy in my office a month ago. He had some problems, nothing that couldn't be overcome. And the next minute, he broke down crying. Because he said, my suicide thoughts are coming back. And I thought, holy smokes, what do I do now, Coach? So it's a problem. It's a serious problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got a name for it, and I can't recall. Mm-hmm. Right, and one of the things that I'm working on, nuts to McLaren, I'm going to work with the people who want to work with us. And when you have a cop, be it a state trooper, sheriff's deputy, Lapeer City, wherever, and they're on the road and they come in touch with a veteran who's in crisis, I want to develop that cheat sheet so that the officer, and we're going to give it to 211. They won't even have to carry it in the car. They can go radio in and say, hey, I got a 32-year-old vet, Iraqi vet, here's the situation. What can we access at 2 in the morning to get this guy help? And they love that idea. And I bet you they show up for a meeting that McLaren wouldn't.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned the name of Patrick Colbeck, who's a state senator from Canton. And he pioneered or tried to pioneer something to fight Michigan Senate Bill 637, which had to do with EMP exposures. More to your expertise, have you dealt with any veteran who has suffered any adverse effects of electromagnetic pulse or 5G exposures in the military or not?
No, I'm not familiar with that or that bill, either one.
Yeah, it's, well, they say that the chairman of the FCC in Washington has said that local municipalities and counties have no say in the rollout of 5G throughout America.
Really?
Yeah. And I guess that was my purpose in coming here tonight, to talk to some friends and people I've known for a while. It's scary.
I'm far from an expert in that, but I would look at the template for local, I'm not going to say control, but input over the cable industry.
What?
Local cable, and how the local units of government signed a franchise agreement,
Right.
and they could hold cable companies accountable. Yeah. Lapeer used to have a good one. They, if you wanted a franchise in Lapeer, in your charter or whatever cable company, you had to promise you were going to respond to issues within 30 minutes. I mean, that's how strict they got. I don't know what, that doesn't exist anymore. So. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the good questions.
Pleasure. Lots of information. Before we go on to the drawing and stuff, do you have a postcard issue tonight you want to talk about? This is in connection with everything we've been talking about here. We want to, Carl's got some information on the Carroll Center up there. You all know what I'm talking about, which is a pretty heavy thing right here. Let's listen to what Carl's got to say on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. So we talked about this a little bit, or it came up a little bit last meeting, so I won't go into it a lot. But if you're involved at all with mental health issues in the state of Michigan, you know, all of the hospitals like we used to have here in Lapeer County, most all of them have been closed down. And generally that's a good thing, get people in adult foster care or as close to the level of lightest touch care, I guess, as possible that they can handle. Unfortunately, we've probably gone too far where people who are severely and persistently mentally ill don't have enough of the right kind of facilities. As Sheriff McKenna pointed out last month, a lot of those folks who are simply mentally ill end up in the various prisons and jails throughout the state. And one of the issues is, of course, that's not a good spot for them, is we simply don't have enough of those long-term psychiatric mental health beds in the state of Michigan like we used to have. One of the ways they were going to start to address that is they were going to rebuild the Caro Center up in Caro, which is a psychiatric hospital. They had actually broke ground last October. They had been working on, the process of getting it going, planning and everything for about a year, and it was going to take about 2 years to get it going. Well, unfortunately, when Governor Granholm came in here this March, after looking at it just briefly, they put it on hold for at least temporarily so they can study it more. Did I say Governor Whitmer? Yeah. Sorry if I get them confused. I didn't even notice it. Did not do that on purpose. So anyway, Governor Whitmer, her administration, they put it on hold. They hired a consultant who is going to come up with, the facts and figures of what they should do. The complaints with Carroll Center is that there's staffing issues. They can't get the people they need, supposedly. They cannot get the psychiatrists that they need. Also, they complain that, and I think this is just kind of a sense of, I don't know where these people are coming from, must be the city. Caro is rural, and it's not just rural, but it's very hard to get to. Oh, it's remote. Caro is remote. So the director of Michigan's Health and Human Services, Robert Gordon, is on record of saying that they should shut Caro down entirely and move the new hospital somewhere else, assuming somewhere south, Detroit or that area. This would have huge effects. First of all, the Carroll Center, it's centrally located. It serves the Thumb region, the kind of southeast Michigan, central Michigan, and all of the UP. So if we go too far south, then it's a really big issue. Now, about 80% of the people that are patients at Caro live within, they come from a county that's within an hour drive. 70% of the staff members that work there are within a 30-minute drive, so it's nicely centrally located. 80% of their patients come from Genesee, Oakland, and Macomb counties, so they're not that far away. The Carroll Center and building a new hospital there it's been there for 100 years, so it's accepted in the community. There's not, if you build a new facility there versus somewhere else, you're not going to have to worry about the NIMBY, the not in my backyard. There's already one there, and they want the new one there, so it's very much accepted by the community. There's lots of available land up there, city sewers available already, and they can also get city water, so those aren't issues. And as I said before, Michigan desperately needs more psychiatric beds. The Carroll Center, if they would restart the process, could be up and running, the new facility, within 2 years. Another reason why we should contact Governor Whitmer and let her know that, leave this psychiatric hospital in Caro. This is a good spot for it, is it has a huge economic impact in Caro and Tuscola County and into the whole region. It's the second largest employer in Tuscola County. There's about 350 jobs there, direct jobs, and then from that about approximately another 400 indirect jobs are supported indirectly. It's having the psychiatric hospital there injects about $54 million into the local economy annually. So if they move the facility, if they put it in Saline or somewhere else, it would dramatically increase unemployment in Tuscola County. It would increase the population loss, which is already an issue. It would increase the population loss for the school districts, already an issue. It would negatively impact property values and, of course, the services that the county and the cities could provide, because they'd have less revenue to provide services with. So the Governor Whitmer could make her decision about how to proceed with this hospital as early as the end of this month. So it's very important that we reach out to her, let her know what our thoughts are as soon as possible. I'll be up here at the front table at the end of the meeting. I have handouts with more information. We can email or postcard to her, or even a letter. So yes, yeah. Yep, it's once you get up there, 75 can be quick, but yes. So there's two major trunk lines there, I think 81 and 46. So it's not like it's in the middle of nowhere exactly. But anyway, I'll turn it back over to Tim, and we'll continue with the meeting.